Hello, America. I'm Mark Levin, and this is Life, Liberty, and Levin Saturday. We have two great guests, Senator Ted Cruz and former ambassador to Israel from the United States, David Friedman. But before we get to our great guests, it's an amazing thing. Kamala Harris is running for president of the United States, but not as Kamala Harris. She's raised $1 billion. Nobody's ever raised $1 billion to put propaganda on TV and radio on the internet, to try and smear Donald Trump, and to try and run as somebody she never is, never would be, never could be. And of course, we have over $1 billion, no doubt, in in-kind corporate media contributions doing exactly the same thing. We have unfreedom of the press in this country, not freedom of the press, and we have a phony, fraudulent, fictional character running for president of the United States. I heard some commentators say, the public's just getting to know Kamala Harris. No, unfortunately, too many people who are undecided don't know Kamala Harris and never will. And this is a big problem. And I want to remind you about the real Kamala Harris. Will the real Kamala Harris please step forward? No, she won't. This is the real Kamala Harris. Eliminate fracking. Eliminate the combustion engine. Open border. Decriminalize illegal immigration. Free health care for illegal immigrants. In fact, national health care. Everybody gets Medicare. Nobody gets private care. That's been her position. Student loan cancellation, even though it's unconstitutional, she didn't get the support of Congress. Eliminate, as I said, private health care. Infanticide. That's what she believes in. That's what her running mate believes in. They believe an abortion up to the last second when the baby is viable. That's not Roe v. Wade. Roe v. Wade says in the last 3 months, states can regulate it. They don't support Roe v. Wade. There's not another country on the face of the earth, including genocidal countries led by monsters, that want to put in place the kind of abortion policies that they do. She opposes school choice, especially important to poor kids and little minority kids. She opposes it because she's bought and paid for by Randy Weingarten and the AFT. That's the truth. She opposes Title IX. Women's sports have been destroyed thanks to her. She wants to defund the police. She supports sanctuary states and cities. She supports a nationwide gun registration. She opposes parental rights. And it's even worse than that. She actually has a record. She keeps talking about herself being a tough prosecutor, tough law and order, tough on criminals. She's a liar. And the media know it, especially the media in California. Here's AP, June 26, 2019. Victims question Kamala Harris' record on clergy abuse. I had Joe Piscatelli on this program maybe 2 months ago. The poor guy laid out exactly what her record was, that she would not prosecute these pedophiles, these pedophile priests in San Francisco. I had him on for 2 segments. Do you know what news organization picked it up? None. None. None in cable, none in network, none. Joy Piscatelli was angry when Kamala Harris emerged as a contender for the Democratic presidential nomination. It brought back the frustration he felt in the 2000s. When he was a newly minted spokesman for clergy sex abuse victims, Harris was San Francisco's DA. Survivors of clergy abuse and their attorneys say that Harris's record on fighting sex abuse within the Catholic Church back then is relevant as the U.S. Senator from California campaigns for the presidency as a tough-on-crime ex-prosecutor who got her start prosecuting child sexual abuse cases. They complained that Harris was consistently silent on the Catholic Church's abuse scandal, first as DA and then later as Attorney General. Tell me, what news organization is focused on that? Friends at Breitbart, 2020, Catholic abuse survivors. Kamala Harris chose not to prosecute a single abusive priest. The executive director of the National Network of Survivors of Sexual Abuse by Priests said in a statement, said to Breitbart News that then DA Kamala Harris chose to ignore an opportunity to investigate priests in San Francisco for abusing children. Zach Heiner, the executive director of Survivors Network of those abused by priests, corroborated the bombshell details about Harris revealed by Breitbart News senior contributor Peter Schweitzer in his book, Profiles in Corruption. What did he find? Schweitzer exposed that during her 13-year tenure as DA and then Attorney General, Harris failed to prosecute even one case of pre-sexual abuse, though during the same period, at least 50 major cities had brought charges against priests identified as pedophiles. He also noted Harris's ties to those working to block exposure of the Archdiocese's secret documents containing information about priests accused of sexual abuse. They were extensive. They were also donors to her campaign. But it's more than that. What about Kamala Harris's position on crime as a DA and as an attorney general? Let's take a look at one thing, the death penalty. Her decision not to seek the death penalty, she never sought the death penalty ever. She said that she was ideologically opposed to it. But one case in particular got attention. When David Hill gunned down San Francisco police officers Isaac Espinoza and Barry Parker right before Easter in 2004, many in the community called for Harris to seek the death penalty, especially since Espinoza died and Parker suffered severe injuries. So even in the murder of a police officer, she would not seek the death penalty. Harris also received criticism for not seeking the death penalty for Edwin Ramos, an illegal alien, an MS-13 gang member from El Salvador, who murdered a father and two sons who were driving home from a family picnic. But she's a tough prosecutor. She's used to prosecuting transnational gangs. Which one did she prosecute? She never sat in the first chair as a litigator, beginning to end case, ever, in all her years as DA and Attorney General. She has managed to slide through these jobs, climbing the ladder to Vice President. Now she wants a promotion. What else? She has surrounded herself with anti-Semites and worse. The Harris campaign, Washington Examiner, reportedly told Arab American leaders in Michigan that Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison is a top contender for Attorney General. 2013, Ellison dined at a private dinner alongside Iranian President Hassan Rouhani, a Nation of Islam leader, Louis Farrakhan, who compared Jews to termites, trumpeted Hitler as a very great man, and called Judaism a dirty religion. To make matters worse, Phil Gordon, Harris's current national security advisor, would likely occupy a top security post should the Democrats win. Gordon has strong connections to the cadre of Washington officials now suspected of being Iranian regime spies. He's also closely tied to Pentagon policy advisor Ariane Tabatabai, who is under investigation for peddling an Iranian persuasion campaign from inside our nation's defense capital. Let me also tell you about Ilyan Goldberg. Ilyan Goldberg has a track record of anti-Israel stances. He backed the infamous 2016 UN Resolution 2334 that opposed Israeli sovereignty over the Western Wall, and he threw his weight behind the disastrous Iran deal, even pushed to restore funding to the Hamas-allied UNRWA, United Nations Relief and Works Agency. His views align with the anti-Zionist, anti-Semitic attitudes of Harris's Director of Arab American Outreach as of this day, Brenda Abdelal, who once complained that Zionists are controlling U.S. policy. So she surrounds herself with Ellison, Gordon, Goldenberg, Abdelal, and even considering them for cabinet positions. She's the most anti-Israel candidate to ever run for president of the United States. She also has very deep ties with this group, CARE. CARE is a Hamas front group. It was founded in the 1990s in a meeting in Philadelphia at a Marriott hotel right outside of the Philadelphia airport. The FBI had a bug in there, taped the entire thing. As California's Attorney General and then as a U.S. Senator, Harris forged a relationship with the Council on American Islamic Relations, CARE, one of the nation's top anti-Israel groups and advocates for boycotts of the Jewish state, and involved in these protests in the street. You know, the River to the Sea protests. CARE advised Harris on community issues during her time in California politics. She later offered the group her gratitude and admiration. Even more than that, as the Attorney General, Harris partnered with the local CARE officials, relied on them to advise her about community matters. In 2016, she ran for the Senate. CARE's Political Action Committee donated $1,750 to boost her campaign. CARE PAC also has donated to prominent anti-Semites like Ilhan Omar. And by the way, she's never criticized Omar, never criticized Tlaib. In fact, comes to their defense and supported the re-elections. Harris's relationship with CARE, this Hamas front group, carried over into her Senate career. In 2018, she was one of several lawmakers who penned letters of support to CARE on its 24th anniversary. CARE is also known for its involvement in a fundraising effort tied to the Muslim Brotherhood that sought to support the Hamas terror group. The case is known as the Holy Land Foundation trial, presented evidence that CARE and its founders sought to financially boost the U.S.-designated terror group Hamas, which continues to wage war in Israel. And the director of CARE, after October 7th, stated that he supported what took place on October 7th. She's never renounced CARE. They still support her for president. Now, what about her character? How does she treat the little people? Gee, there used to be articles about this all the time, but not anymore. No, we got to get her across the finish line. Vice President Kamala Harris had 92% staff turnover during her first 3 years. This is from the open books. People really, really do not want to work for Kamala Harris, wrote former staffer Dan McLaughlin in January 2022. Our auditors, they write at the open books, quantified an extraordinary high 91.5% staff turnover rate. We used U.S. Senate disclosures to conduct our investigation, and those databases can be downloaded. As of March 31, 2024, only 4 of the initial 47 staffers from the first year are still employed consistently and without interruption by the vice president. Furthermore, the turnover chaos isn't getting better. In the trailing 12-month period, 24 staffers left. That's almost half of the employees. In her first year and a half as vice president, Harris saw the departure of her chief of staff, communications director, domestic policy advisor, national security advisor, and other aides, wrote The Atlantic magazine. Now think about this. We want joy and happiness. We got to turn the page, you know. December 2021, reports have swirled for months about Harris's office environment and turnover. A former staffer told the Washington Post the vice president was a highly critical boss. With Kamala, you have to put up with a constant amount of soul-destroying criticism. Some said Harris would refuse to analyze briefing materials, like pre-hurricane materials, set forth by employees, but then scolded them if she appeared unprepared. Quote, "It's clear that you're not working with somebody who is willing to do the prep and the work." And we see that right now. With Kamala, you have to put up with a constant amount of soul-destroying criticism and also her own lack of confidence, so you're constantly sort of propping up a bully, and it's not really clear why. One of the things we've said in our little text groups, the former employees among each other, is what is the common denominator through all this is her. Her, Duran, who left Harris's office after 5 months in his role. And in a recent column, Duran, now the editorial page editor at the San Francisco Examiner, wrote that it was sad to see her repeat the same old destructive patterns. And it goes on, these quotes. Politico used to write about this. Now, of course, they sit on it. Not a healthy environment. Kamala Harris office rife with dissent. Dropping the F-bomb all the time. Telling people to call her General. Good morning, General. And stand firm. One young intern she told, don't ever look me in the eyes. You know what that is? That's a psycho. But you know what, ladies and gentlemen? I think this Harris and Emhoff marriage is a marriage made in heaven. These two really do fit each other. And the media have done everything they can to kill this. Cable news, network news, Washington Post, New York Times, and I want you to think about how they cover Trump or how they would cover any Republican. You know, Mitt Romney tied a cage on his roof with a dog. Okay, this goes to character. They're running a phony, fraudulent, deceitful campaign trying to lie to the American people about this woman and her record. She is a disaster. She has a real problem. Kamala Harris's husband was inappropriate and misogynist at work, his former colleagues tell the Daily Mail. Attorneys who worked with Doug Emhoff at his former firm, Venable, say he yelled expletives, held a men-only cocktail hour in the office, revoked work permits from women who didn't flirt with him, and took only young, attractive associates in a limousine to a ball. A 2019 lawsuit also claimed sex discrimination by other partners in the LA office Emhoff ran, and that while engaged to Harris, he hired an unqualified part-time model as a legal secretary because she was young, attractive, and friendly with the powerful men in the office. Why isn't anyone covering this other than a handful of newspapers? The claims are the latest in a string of allegations revealed by the Daily Mail that threaten to shatter Emhoff's image, heavily promoted by the Harris presidential campaign of a feminist ally and a wifey guy. Oh, and the new kind of manliness. In August, the Daily Mail revealed the LA lawyer cheated on his first wife, got his daughter's grade school teacher and nanny pregnant. As reported by Breitbart, Doug Emhoff paid $80,000 in hush money to his former nanny as part of a non-disclosure agreement. Oh, whoa. Did anybody tell Alvin Bragg that? Hush money to silence somebody he may have abused or a woman. Wow, during the course of a campaign. Now, that hush money was paid earlier. but it wasn't revealed. So as I understand it, the precedent's set in that Manhattan courtroom. Because obviously they're trying to keep all this quiet to influence the election. Are they not? Wow, that seems like a campaign contribution to me. Now, folks, I could go on and on. Why am I doing this? There is so much here in Kamala Harris's background as a DA, as an attorney general, as a senator, as a vice president. So much. They talk about book burnings. They talk about taking books off shelves. This is absolute censorship. It is intentional. Anything Donald Trump says, anything Donald Trump does, they twist and they turn into a major event. They're trying to create here a candidate that does not exist in Kamala Harris. She's not pleasant. She's not nice. She's not happy. She doesn't treat people around her or her staff with respect. She doesn't care about the little people. She's never prepared. Her staff says that. We saw that with Hurricane Helene. She goes on the attack when she is questioned. Her entire existence is an existence of trying to move up the ladder. She was the border czar, but then she's not, and all the horrors that have taken place in the border. Her visits to the border have been spectacularly phony, all for pictures, all so she can say she's been to the border. Same with her non-call to Governor DeSantis. Can I help you in some way? He never got the call. She's hanging out in Hollywood, in LA. She's hanging out in Las Vegas. Takes her 4 days to get back to Washington, D.C. She's going on these pathetically stupid shows, the Howard Stern show. Notice the media don't bring up anything about Howard Stern's past programming, about lesbians and pornography. Then she goes to The View. They've destroyed that program. Barbara Walters started that program. The View was supposed to have a variety of views. Now it has a variety of views, from Leninism to Marxism to Maoism to Trotskyism. Oh, and we hate Trump. That's about it. Then she goes on the Stephen Colbert show. That guy's not a comedian. He's a joke. That's why his ratings stink. That's why Gutfeld beats him so often. And then she goes on CBS. And her answer about Israel is so illiterate, so disjointed, that what does CBS do? They didn't edit her comment. They removed her comment and replaced it with another comment she had made earlier. In other words, that's propaganda for the Democrat Party, for their phony candidate, for the government, CBS. Oh, we need another debate, they say. There were 2 debates. Those debates, so-called moderators had an opportunity to bring up just one of the things that I mentioned. Just one. They brought up none. They brought up none. I told you last week, and let me just underscore it, Kamala Harris has serious personality and character issues. She's not very smart. She doesn't do the work. Her staff says so, and they're right. It's so obvious. She's driven solely by her ideology, which is Marxist Islamist. They want to slip her into the White House by hook or by crook, and this country will rue the day.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.